Good morning, students. Welcome to another edition of our lesson for SS1 students. The topic is diseases of agricultural importance. This topic, we are going to classify it into two groups. We'll talk about the crop diseases, and later on will be animal diseases. But for this particular lesson is on crop diseases. Your biology madam is the presenter, Bidong Raymond Udo. At the end of this lesson, students will be able, by the end of this lesson, you will be able to 1. Define the term disease. 2. List 3 diseases of crops. And 3. Discuss 2 general effects of disease on crops production. I take it again. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to define the term disease. 2. List 3 diseases of crops. And 3. Discuss 2 general effects of disease on crops production. Before we begin this lesson, our last lesson we discussed on relevance of biology to agriculture. We saw how biology is closely related to agriculture because both deal with plants and animals. Also, in the last lesson, we discussed on classification of plants. We saw 3 groups. 1. Botanical classification. 2. Agricultural classification. And 3. Classification based on life cycle. On that botanical classification, we saw 3 major groups of classification botanically. 1. Bryophyta. 2. Talophyta. 3. Tracheophyta. We discussed on agricultural classification of various groups like legume, pulses, which is legume, spices, and so on. But under the life cycle classification, we saw 1 year production and harvesting within 1 year, annual crops. Then within 2 years, binary crops, and many years, which we have the many years classification, life cycle. For today's lesson, we are on diseases of crops. First of all, what do you understand by the term disease? Disease, we know that is any deviation from the normal state of health of that organism or crops. Like every other living organisms, plants are susceptible to diseases. Crop disease is any harmful deviation or alteration from the normal functioning of the physiological processes. I take it again. What do you mean by crop disease? Crop disease is any harmful deviation or alteration from the normal functioning of the physiological processes. Diseased plants suffer disturbances from normal life processes and function. Let's look at the causes of crop diseases. We have various causes: viruses, bacterial, fungi, nematodes, and nutrient deficiencies. Those are the causes of crop diseases. I want to start with fungal diseases. I want to give you a brief information about fungal diseases. Fungal crop diseases are very common in plants. Most disease-causing fungi are microscopic and parasitic. Take note, fungal diseases of crops are microscopic, that is too tiny, and parasitic. They live on another living organism, either outside or inside. Let's look at the examples of crop diseases that is under fungal. Fungal diseases, for example, are smuts, rusts, blights, root rot, downing, mildew, and cigato, which is leaf spots. Take notes. Examples of fungal diseases are smuts, rusts, blights, root rot, downing mildew, and cigatoga, or you call it leaf spot. Those are the fungal diseases. Now we want to look at the vector. Fungal diseases are spread by insect vectors. For example, the mosaic-causing virus is carried by aphid. The infection sets in at the start of the flowering and causing considerable loss in the yields of crops. Tobacco, cassava, garden egg are susceptible to these diseases. Let's look at the bacterial diseases, the general information about bacterial crop diseases. These include bacterial blights, bacterial wilts, leaf spots, bacterial galls, and soft rot. Take note. Examples of bacterial diseases under crops are bacterial blights, bacterial wilts, leaf spots, bacterial galls, and soft rot. We want to look at the common crop diseases. Those viral diseases, fungal diseases, bacterial diseases. I will choose 2 viral diseases, and we are going to discuss on the following important points. We will look at the agents of that disease, we'll look at the symptoms of that disease, and control measure of these diseases. I want to start with viral diseases. One of the viral disease is cassava mosaic disease. That one is so common. Cassava mosaic disease. We'll consider this. We'll look at the causal organism. That is the organism that causes this particular disease called cassava mosaic disease. We will look at the vector. We will also look at the symptom. Now I want to start with number 1, causal organism. What causes cassava mosaic disease? It's no other thing than what? Virus. Take note, is a virus. Vector. Who are the carrier of this disease, cassava mosaic disease? White flies. The white flies is Bemisia nigeriaceae. The third one is the symptoms. Let's look at the symptoms. The symptom you can find in this disease, is mottle leaves, stem or leaf distortion. You see stunted growth. You see leaf mosaic pattern. You see patterns on the leaf of cassava, and the yield of that crop, which is cassava, will be reduced. And how can we control this disease, cassava mosaic disease? One of the control measures is the use of resistant varieties. The second one, you can uproot and burn the infected plant. Or you can spray the vectors with insecticide, that is using chemical insecticide to do what? To control this disease. And also, you use disease-free stem cutting. and farm sanitation. Farm sanitation do help to control cassava mosaic. What are the symptoms? You see yellowish of the leaf, which we call leaf chlorosis, with mosaic mottling. You see the stunted plants with coil leaf. You look at the leaves of the cassava. You see coil leaves, wilting, and death of plant. Those are the symptoms of cassava mosaic. Now let's move on to fungal disease. Fungal disease. We'll also use the same pattern. We'll look at the organism that causes it, the mode of transmission and symptoms, and control measure. I want to start with the fungal disease called maize rust. Maize rust. What causes it? It's a fungus, and the name of that fungus is Poncinia polycera. Poncinia polycera. Now let's look at how the disease is transmitted. It's through spores deposition by air. That means it's carried by air through spore. And what are the symptoms of this disease, maize rust? You will see the red leaf spots. You see premature leaves, see dates, and the yield of the crop will reduce. How can we control this disease? Take note. How can we control this disease, maize rust? One of the control measures is early planting. Number 2, crop rotation. And number 3, the use of resistant variety. Another fungal disease that we are going to discuss on is cocoa black pod disease. Cocoa black pod disease is a fungal disease. What causes it is fungi or fungus. The name of that fungus is Phytophthora parmivora. I repeat, Phytophthora parmivora. That is the name of the fungus. Then transmission mode is through rain splash. Can also be transmitted through insects. What are the signs, which are the symptoms of this disease, cocoa black pod disease? You will see the black spot on pod, and you see rotten pod, and the yield of that particular crop will reduce, which we call low yield. How can we control this disease? You spread it with the chemical. The name of the chemical is Baldic mixture. Baldic mixture. We go to another causes of crop disease, which is bacterial disease. We want to start with one of the bacterial disease, which is Cassava Leaf Blight. Cassava Leaf Blight. The causal organism is bacterium, and the name of that bacterium is Xanthomonas manihottis. Xanthomonas manihottis. How can this disease be transmitted? Through infected cutting. Through infected cuttings. Rain splash is also the transmission mode. Also through insect and even infected tools can transmit this disease. What are the signs or symptoms in this kind of disease? To cassava, the disease is cassava leaf blight. What are the signs? Blighting of leaves, blightings of stem, and sometimes you see stem back and canker on stems. Those are the symptoms. How can we control this disease? The control measures are use of resistant varieties. You can also use disease-free cutting. Early planting also helps to control. And the good practice, farming practice which we call crop rotation also help to control cassava leaf blight. We move on to another bacterial diseases. Number 2, cotton black arm disease. Cotton black arm disease. Remember, the first one was cassava leaf blight. That is number 1 bacterial disease. And we are on number 2 bacterial disease, which is cotton black arm disease. What causes this disease? It's a bacterium. And how is this disease transmitted? Through leaves and stem near the ground. Those leaves and stem that is closer to the ground, near the ground, is the transmitting or transmission mode. What are the signs of this disease? You will see angular spot on the leaves. 2, retarded growth. And 3, death of plants. And sometimes you see exudates from affected leaves and you see boil rots. How can we control this disease? We can control it using plant resistant variety. Another one is seed dressing. Another one is crop rotation. And sometimes you can uproot and burn the infected plant. It's also a control measure. Okay? Now let's move on to another causes of crop diseases, nematode diseases. Nematode diseases. I want to start with the root knot disease of tomato and okra. This particular disease affects tomato and okra. What are the causative agents? The causative agent or organism is no other thing than nematodes. How do these diseases transmitted? Through nematode in the soil. Where can we find the nematode? It's in the soil. Can be transmitted to the crop. What are the signs and the symptoms of this disease? Root knot disease of tomato and okra. You see knotting or galling of roots. You see retarded growth and the yield reduction, sometimes premature death of the plant. Those are the symptoms. How can we control this disease? And what is the name of that disease? Root knot disease of tomato and okra. How can we control it? Soil sterilization, that is one measure. 2, crop rotation is another measure. You can uproot and burn the infected plant. That is another control measure. Let's go to the general effects. What are the effects of these diseases? Be it viral disease, fungal disease, bacterial disease, or nematode disease, or even the nutrient deficiency. What are the effects of these diseases on crop production? Number 1, disease generally reduces the yield and the productivity of the crops will also be reduced. That is one general effect. It causes a lot of harm to the farmer by reducing the yield or the productivity of the crops reduced. 2, they reduce the quality of the plant. The plant quality is also reduced. 3, they cause reduction in the income of the farmer. Yes, the farmer puts a lot of money. At the end of it, the reduction comes in terms of the outcome of it. That is another effect. Number 4, they cause the malformation on plants. Malformation on plants. 5, they can kill or cause the death of plant. Yes, that is another effect. 6, they increase the cost of production in the cost of controlling them. If you are trying to control these diseases, the cost of production or the cost of controlling that disease by using chemical or whatever other measure is costly. Then 7, They render vegetables and fruit unattractive and unmarketable. That is to say, the vegetables and the fruits, a mere looking at it will be unattractive, will not be attracted to the customer. And the market value will also do what? Reduce. Number 8, their activities cause retarded growth in crop plants. Those are the general effects of diseases, be it fungal disease, viral diseases, bacterial diseases, and even nematode. Those are the effects. Now let's look at the control, general control of these crop diseases or plant diseases. The general control, we have 3 methods or 3 measures of controlling diseases. Diseases of crop plants can be controlled through cultural methods, biological methods, and chemical control measures. I want to start with cultural control. What do you mean by cultural control of disease? The use of crop rotation, that is cultural control. Use of resistant varieties, tillage practices, regular weeding, fallowing, timely planting, pruning, burning of infected crops, etc. All these are cultural control. Biological control method. What do you mean by that? Biological control method. This involves the use of natural enemies of the disease to reduce or totally eliminate the disease. Finally, we look at the chemical control measure. What do you mean by that method? The use of chemical. Chemical control measure involves the use of chemicals such as fungicide. That one is the chemical used to control what? Fungi. Nematicide. This is the chemical used to control nematodes. And insecticide is the chemical used to control insects. To dust or you spray the plant or plant material in order to prevent or control plant diseases. For example, the use of insecticide to control insect vector. Let's go to the summary of the general control measure of diseases of crops. Take note. In this one, I'm going to list all the control measures, and from there you can classify them, whether it's cultural control or chemical control or biological control. I want to start with this. Sometimes if you are asked to list maybe 5 control measures of crop diseases, you have to mention. Take for instance number 1, removal and burning of infected plants. Removal and control of burning of infected plant. What control measure is that? It's cultural control method. Number 2, regular weeding of the farm. Regular weeding of the farm prevent disease pathogen from being harbored by weeds. Regular weeding, that one is cultural control. The third one, practice crop rotation. Yes, we have discussed about various practices in the farm. One of it is crop rotation. Crop rotation is one of the control measures of crop diseases, and that one is under cultural control. Number 4, practice seed dressing with plant protection. Chemicals such as Fernasan D before planting. Then that means you dress this particular plant with this chemical Fernasan before you plant that particular plant or that particular seed. That number 4 control measure is cultural. Number 5, early planting to avoid the period of disease occurrence. Number 5, early planting. Planting that seed or the stem early That one is cultural control measure. Number 6, spraying insecticide to control the insect vector. Take note, insecticide is the chemical used to control insect, and that method or control measure is chemical control measure. Okay. Number 7, using healthy seeds or stem for propagation. For cultivating, you use the seed or the stem that is healthy. That method is cultural control measure. Number 8, removal or burning of infected plant. That is another control measure. 9, spraying plant protection chemical such as fungicide and nematicide. Take note, it's not nematodes. Spraying plant protection chemicals such as fungicide and nematicide. Nematicide is the chemical used to control nematode, while fungicide is the chemical used to control fungi. Take note, that one is the chemical method or measure. And number 10, destruction of crop residues after harvesting to prevent the buildup of disease pathogens, or practice good farm sanitation, or you call it hygiene. That is another control measure. We are coming to the end of the lesson, but take this question, that is evaluation. Take note of this question and answer them. Number 1, define crop diseases. The introductory aspect of this lesson, I define crop diseases. Number 2, or crop disease. Number 2, list 5 diseases of crops from different causal organisms. Take note, you have to list 5 diseases of crops from different causal organisms. What are the causal organisms? Could be virus, could be fungi, it could be bacteria, it could be nematode. You have to list 5 diseases from different causal organisms. Take for instance, if you mention a particular crop disease, state whether it is a fungi or bacteria or nematode disease, and so on. So these 5 types of the crop diseases will be from different causal organisms. One from fungi, one from bacteria, one from nematode, and so on. Number 3 question. Describe any 2 diseases listed above, stating symptoms, mode of transmission, effects, and control. Please take note of this. You can tabulate it or you can list it as I did. You mention the particular disease. You mention the symptoms, that is the sign of that disease in that crop, the mode of transmission, and the effects of that disease on that crops, and the control measure. We are on the last page. For your feedback, link us through SS1 at brightfuturecollege.com, or you can use my WhatsApp number as I earlier display on the screen before. Thank you. Take care till our next lesson. Bye.